Ducati Panigale V4R 2019, 2023. Let's talk about it. First thing first, let's talk about the design. Starting with the livery, on my bike you could see the livery is a bit different from the previous generation. We have a number 1 in the front, then we have slightly different colors. I do prefer my colors because it looks a little bit brighter. Moving down over here, we have some extra ventilation. You could see it over here on the lower fairing. The wings are also slimmer and also lighter. They look very nice and slick. Moving towards the tank is a bit bigger to give you a little bit extra comfort and grip when you're riding. Then the seat is also slightly different compared to that one. Overall, I feel like they updated and upgraded the bike to make it easier to ride.
But also to really hold you in there. I think that's the biggest thing. When you're leaning off the bike, you just feel that you feel safe. It's easier to go faster than if you're hanging off the bike and you don't have that comfort with the bike. So it's like they listen to the rider versus listening to the Italian designer. Next thing, let's talk about what everybody really wants to hear about often is power delivery. This is the first generation V4R, okay? So it was the first time making the R with this power plant, and it was a little bit more of a handful to ride. Despite the engines being the same, 998 cc's, this 2019 V4R is a lot snappier on the throttle. It feels like the torque hits harder versus the 2023 bike, despite it also having the full power mode. It just feels like it's a little bit more refined. They smoothed it out, they made it better for you. Whereas this one kind of demands a little bit more respect from you because it tells you like if you use the power band, you better be ready for what comes with it. The 2023 bike in comparison, despite still being an absolute savage, you just don't even realize how fast you're going on the 23 bike until you look down. And you unfortunately have to question reality because you're thinking, how can I absolutely be going this fast when the bike feels so composed? And that I feel like is some of the magic that Ducati put into this. Yes, in some ways, does this bike maybe feel a little bit more engaging or fun to ride? Sure. But I feel like you need to be a little bit of a more skilled rider, like far more skilled than I am, to really get the best out of it. Whereas the 23 bike, in accordance with the stuff we spoke about, just made it so much more user-friendly.
Let's talk about the dry clutch now. So in the 2023, the dry clutch is smaller and lighter, but also more expensive. On his bike, the dry clutch is the same for the 2019 V4R generation, SP and SP2. That bike, that dry clutch is less expensive than mine.
In terms of cost, it becomes a very big difference because, like she mentioned, the dry clutch is shared between different models. Parts are a little bit more wider sourced, more attainable. Whereas the smaller, even though I think it only sheds around £1 or so, you pay for that pound heavily with your dollar, with your wallet. Yes, the parts are more expensive and you can only get it from Ducati. Now let's get into the thing that most people want to know about is how well can this bike handle compared to the other one, especially considering the cost you paid to buy them and use them. I'm not gonna lie, when I first got this 2019 bike, coming from a 2022 V4, I was not overly impressed with it. Yes, it is an R, and yes, it makes you feel special, but I thought this first generation R, it felt like if a chef takes all the best ingredients, but he puts the recipe together wrong. Because you have all the great components on here, but the handling wasn't quite it for me. This bike was a little bit harder to turn in stock form, and it was harder to hold the line. I think it just needed a little bit of tweaking, and there's a lot of different variations of how people go about doing that. Essentially, it felt like the front is a little too soft, the rear is a little bit too stiff, and the bike would occasionally tie itself in knots, and you'd be frustrated thinking like, why can the World Superbike riders do it, and I'm struggling riding, my average B road.
Seems like a you problem.
It does seem like a me problem. On the other hand, stock for stock talking, not talking about making any changes, the 2023 bike is a lot more fluid in that regard. It is able to hold the line better, turn in better. The suspension is a tad bit more compliant, and there's plenty of reasons for that. Despite both these bikes having Öhlins front forks, we have an Öhlins damper in the rear, it's not quite the same. Lana's bike, the front forks have 5mm more fork travel. The rear shock spring is also a bit lighter, And the rear shock length, meaning it's a little bit taller in the rear, has been increased by 4 millimeters in accordance with what the Panigales come with as a little trick is an adjustable swing arm pivot. It is set in a different position than this one is, which totally gives you, from this bike to that bike, about a 20 millimeter difference in rear height between the two bikes, which just gives you this excellent rake for better turn-in, but because now you also have more travel in the front, the bike just has so much more grip and confidence to get through the corner. And I feel like they just basically took their time to develop their formula right when they released that bike. So even though looking at them, the knobs are the same, even the settings are the same if you look at the manuals, which unfortunately I did because I couldn't figure out, like, Wailana seems like she's having the time of her life, and I'm like here putting a smile on and thinking, like, you know, this thing should be a little smoother. You really realize the work that Ducati put in every year. It's not just a different number or different wings on the bike. It really is
a lot of upgrades.
A lot of work to make that bike what it is. And I think it's even been reflected in the World Superbike, considering the bike became easy to ride and there's a lot more riders that are doing great on it.
To finish up the comparison between these two bikes, we all know that the V4Rs rev high up till 16,000 RPMs. And for my 2023 bike, Ducati decided to make it less stressful for the bike.
Ducati gave you a little extra reliability with the 2023R. For the first time, they have like a drilled connecting rod there, which provides like a little extra lubrication during high stress, because imagine how high they rev, especially if people go racing with these. And the piston also has this DLC treated mantle, which basically helps to reduce friction between the piston and the cylinder. And Ducati says, according to them, it's the first time they ever did on a production bike, so it's the first time a production bike has seen that treatment. They say it's theoretically only been used on GP and maybe some F1 cars before. So again, just like some of the previous stuff that we spoke about, like Ducati really put in the thought process and the work into it, really give you not only like a fast, more confident package, but something that's also hopefully going to last. Depending on how many more miles we put on these bikes, we'll get back to you with the feedback of how well they do last.
And I hope you guys liked the whole video and come back to see more.